The name's Chief Garrett, and I'm inviting you all into my very special Elders Lair. You're gonna die!
Hello, my fellow hunters, fellow riders, and welcome to the end game of Stories 2. Once you complete the story, high rank will be your destination, and the Elders Lair you will unlock. This is a series of challenges set across 10 floors that will have you facing off against the most ferocious monsters in the game, reward you with some incredible equipment, and, at least in the later stages, push you to your absolute limits as a rider. This stuff gets seriously challenging. But before that, let's go over each and every floor, what you have to do, how best to go about doing it, and what do you get for said doing of it. So you'll unlock the Elders Lair as soon as you've beaten the final boss, and you talk to Gara, where you did do that defeating of the final boss, and he'll send you in. And now, before you have 10 floors of goodness to explore. Let's go through them. Floor number 1 is simply hunt and kill 6 specific monsters spread around the map. This one is quite simple and straightforward, they're not too challenging, and you can just work through it with your best Monsties and setup. I will say that for every single monster in the Elders Lair, they represent a easily, repeatably farmable high-rank version of themselves if you want to get their materials, which is really useful because a lot of the monsters that you will find here are just really tricky, rare, or hard to find, at least in high-rank version, around the rest of the world, so this is actually a fantastic source for just general monster bittery. That's probably one of the main reasons you want to unlock all the floors and complete them, so you have access to this full endgame store of monster parts. In any case, the only one that might be a little bit of an issue is Pink Rathian and Azure Rathalos simultaneously, but honestly they're not too bad, and the level you're at when you probably get here will have you kind of cleaving through them. The next floor you get to, or number 2, is, well, where things get a little bit different, because what you have to do is break parts. A lot of parts. You have to go in that cave, and you have to absolutely brutally maim as many creatures as you can find. It's quite intense, honestly. At least morally, it's really easy. In actuality, just kill them essentially normally and you'll break the parts that you need to. Obviously, focus on the parts. Double attacking them is fantastic. Single target kinshipping them is fantastic. Actually tagging them while riding your monster for extended periods of time is fantastic. And of course, use an armor set or use a talisman with part breaker on it and you will be absolutely sailing through. The next floor, floor 3, is where things again get more interesting because you have a series of challenges whereby you have to kill monsters in a specific number of turns. Kind of like the Trials quests if you've done them, except you can't go over the limit. You have to kill them within the turn timer. And the catch being, you really need to match the correct type of damage, slashing, blunter, piercing, to the correct body part and get your optimum damage out. Otherwise, you won't make the timer. Now, granted, this first one, you'll probably still be quite powerful relative to it when you get to it, and you will probably just walk through it, especially if you bring someone like Roberto, who will absolutely crush it. But bear in mind, this essentially is your damage efficiency test. Hit the right parts in the right ways and you will be golden. Everything's still kind of chill. The next floor, as we keep going up, is more part breaking, and this is just like the first part breaking with similar level monsters. In fact, I'd argue they're actually easier monsters here. A lot of Nursilla, a lot of Azeroth just rend their stomachs and snap their legs, and you really do feel like a debt collector here, and it makes me a little bit scared of the watch pause. Meow! So, slowly work through that and you'll be good. And I should, at this point, mention a couple things. You can retreat monsters here that are retreatable, so if you're looking for any specific eggs, this also works fantastic for that. and you can leave and come back. If you end a fight and you're down some hearts, down some health, just teleport to a village, refill, teleport back, and continue where you left off. This works for every single floor. You can break half the amount of parts, and then when you return, you still have those half amount of parts broken, and the monsters will respawn, which is kind of weird to me, because, like, it's quite forgiving. Like, there's no real challenge here. It's just farm and grind these monsters until you've broken enough parts, and once you have, move on. Now, floor 5 is where it gets interesting, and this might be the first actual stopping point for you. This is a special story encounter with a Velkana. And don't worry, later on I will give you a spoiler warning before revealing the actual final boss of the area, though it is absolutely incredible. But back to this floor, the Velkana is very neat. She has a specific unique attack pattern that you can figure out by looking at Red's notes that you will find in chests hidden around the floor. A lot of these chests are guarded by specific monsters like Sticky and Zenoga, and there's even a Gammoth blocking your way, but generally you want to find each of Red's notes, give them a read. You could look at them in the battle, and it will essentially tell you how to go about defeating her. If you don't get these, if you don't read and you're just randomly going for it or expecting her to act like a normal Velkana, you will probably get absolutely destroyed because her damage is ludicrous. This is the counter the enemy monster test, and to do that you need to know how to counter it. So explore the cave, get the notes, and then just have your usual effective Velkana setup, a fire Monstie. She will still like to do a lot of technical, but there is a lot going on here, and you need to be prepared as best you can. Using the notes, you can tell when she's going to do a big powerful attack, and you can evade everyone, and it just makes it so much smoother. It takes it from frustrating to a really enjoyable way to fight a monster using that pre-knowledge. Then, once Velkana falls, you get floor 6, which is more part breaking. I won't lie, the part-breaking floors are by far the weakest of the experience, and this one is the worst. Black Gravioses, Desert Celtas Queens, Glavenuses, you gotta break tails, and it's just tedious. Again, it's not hard because you can come back, because your progress saves, you just slowly grind through them as best you can, in the most effective way you can, and eventually you'll be free of it. And then we get to floor 7, and floor 7, I would argue, is probably the second hardest floor, because it really needs you to be perfect and efficient with your damage. It's another kill things in a certain amount of turns, but this time the health you have to chew through relative to the time you have to do it is quite steep. The biggest tip I can give you here is twofold. Number 1, get yourself a water bow. They're all weak to water, every single one you have to face, and they're all weak to piercing, every single one you have to face. And then on that line, get Kyle. He comes with a Mizutsune water bow, and it's entirely possible that he will single-handedly carry you through this with massive damage. Honestly, he was an absolute game changer. Now, when you get to the final one, it is an Ignactor who comes with a surprise basil! And you can bring Reverto again here. Reverto will slice through that basil no problem while you focus on the Ignactor, but I would definitely recommend a water Monstie, a water piercing setup either from you or the hunter, otherwise you're going to find this incredibly difficult. You really do need to bring a lot of damage. The Gravios is probably the most tightly tuned of them all, and you might have to try him a few times, but again, you can have a little checkpoint after each one, come back over and over, and keep trying. The next two floors are fantastic though, 8 and 9. Firstly, 8, it's simply finally a kill the specified monsters, like the very first floor, except these ones are the 5 deviants. And if you've done the Deviant questline, or if you've been in Super Red Ends, you know how these guys work. They're not different, they're not unique, they're not special, they're just powerful versions of each of the Deviants, and you have to use your knowledge of them, coupled with your own solid builds, to get through them. And the thing is, this is a fantastic way to just farm all the Deviants. Yes, you can re-accept the quest if you've done the Deviant questline, but then you need to go to the den and explore it, whereas here you can just teleport in, run to the Deviant, farm it up, and and repeat, and that's really nice to have. Also, it's the place to get them if you don't have or don't want to do that really quite slow quest line. So this works out absolutely fantastically, and once you've killed all 5, well, you're good to move on. And on you go to exactly the same thing again, but this time it's the Elder Dragons. Kill all 5. Well, not quite all the Elder Dragons.
Monkey.
Yes, RageGang is one of the 5. I imagine this is because they didn't want to just throw Velkana in again, as she was an entire own floor and a big deal, and this is the only place that outside of a super rare den that you're going to find yourself a RageGang to actually hunt. A high rank RageGang at that, for his armor, for his equipment, and he is brutal. His damage output is ludicrous, and you're really going to have to stay on your toes. He's a bit of a glass cannon, so as long as you counter accurately, you will be having a good job here, but definitely not one to take light of. Then the other 4 targets are the remaining 4 Elder Dragons, Kirin, Teostra, Kushala, and Nergigante, and again, this is a fantastic place to farm a high-rank Nergigante. Now, there is a secret quest chain for the Elder Dragons like there is the Deviants, but again, it takes ages, and it's unnecessarily convoluted, so this really is just the Elder high-rank farming floor, and it's very, very useful to have access to. But again, it's not the most challenging, simply because, you know, you can just slowly work through it, slowly fight through the Elder Dragons, carefully does it, and you will get there. Finally then, we reach the final floor, where everything becomes very final. And this is your spoiler warning! Spoiler warning! I repeat, spoiler warning! What lies beyond is pure dread. What lies beyond is the best armor set in the game, on balance for every situation, probably. What lies beyond is your one chance and one chance only to get materials from said monster. What lies beyond is... Yes, Fatalis himself lays in wait at the end of the Elders Lair, similar to how he was the ultimate challenge in Stories 1. And that is very cool to see. He looks gorgeous, his attacks are gorgeous, and he is so powerful! Pull out all the stops here, seriously. I would highly recommend bringing Roberto with you. He tanks Fatalis expertly and does a lot of damage. And the main tricky part of Fatalis, outside of him just being Fatalis, is when he gets towards the end. Firstly, though, he'll start with speed. When he uses his big laser beam of death, he'll switch to power. When he uses Skyforce, he'll go back to speed. When he's mad, he'll be technical. And eventually, though, towards the end, when he's mad, he'll switch to power while enraged and just spam huge, powerful dragon blasts against your entire party over and over and over, and weathering that storm is the crux of this fight. I would recommend you get a nice tanky Monstie and just stay riding it for literally ever, managing people's health with items while your buddy kills the monster. That's what I did, and it worked really well, despite being perhaps a little bit of a cheap strategy, but it got the job done. Eventually, Fatalis will bust out a near one-shot attack, and you really want to be either evading it or on your Monstie, or incredibly over-leveled, or it's gonna suck. Then you get the Fatalis Armor if you are lucky and get enough parts from the drop. I would, if you could be bothered, save the game before you face Fatalis, and if you don't get enough parts to at least make one piece of equipment, load and redo him, as annoying as that might be, because you can't fight him again until much, 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 much later, and you're going to want Fatalis Armor because it's amazing. You get Crit XL, which is just nice, a fairly big damage bump. You get a huge heal at the end of single one of your turns with self-heal large, and you get yourself a near immunity to every single status. So yeah, it's just a phenomenal all-round armor. I would say arguably probably going to be the premium armor in PvP, unless you have a talisman that can replicate the panacea and the self-heal, and then you can use something else with it. And it just is a general, I have no idea what I'm going to face, I want to play it safe, put on Fatalis, and you'll have a fantastic time. Also, it's the best armor against Fatalis himself, and that's important because you will face Fatalis again. And look, you want to be wearing this. So once you beat the Elders Lair, the end game of Stories, there is an end game to the end game in the form of the special Elders Lair. Yep, it just keeps going. This essentially is just everything you just did again, exactly the same as it was before, except way more challenging. Higher health on the Monsties, they are more powerful, and they will really ruin your day. When you start getting to the later floors of the special, well, you're going to need fully min-maxed setups, you're going to need fully bingo gened out monsters, you're going to need really, really high level Monsties. You are going to need to be on top of your game and fully kitted out, and eventually you'll reach Fatalis once more, and this is where you can get more materials. But getting to him again is going to be a while, and it's going to take everything you've got, so make that first encounter count. Other than that then, well, have fun! That's my quick little lowdown to the Elders Lair and everything made you need to know. Honestly, it's not the worst thing in the world. There's a few little bumps, the Velkana, floor 7, perhaps Fatalis himself, but other than that, you will smoothly sail through, slowly making your way, and that's fantastic. Alrighty, like you've enjoyed this, subscribe for more, and I will see you soon. Please consider supporting the future of the channel on Patreon down below. And until we meet again, a good boy.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.